Kia ora koutou, ko Graham Mala tauku ingoa, no Tauranga ahau, e kai whakahaere matua ahau, ko NZ Tech tōku ropo, tēnā koutou. I'm Graham Mala, I'm the Chief Executive of NZ Tech, and I'd like to welcome you all here to Tomorrow Expo and to this penultimate session for the day before we head off to the cocktail hour, apparently. And also welcome to, I'd like to welcome the Tech Week TV audience, because this is going live streaming for Tech Week TV, on Tech Week TV in the coming weeks. So today we have a session on scaling up and how to access these three wonderful people's organisations to enable organisations in New Zealand to grow and scale and get offshore and do great things. With me, I would like to introduce, and we'll do it through the evolution of a tech company, Ali. Ali's here representing Callaghan Innovation, and she'll be sharing with us the opportunities and pathways through there. And then we have Shannon from NZTE and Rob from New Zealand Growth Capital Partners. Welcome, crew.
Thank you.
The way we'll run today is each of them will do a little bit of a talk about their stage and come past the baton, and then we'll have some time for some Q&A, and it'd be great to hear from you. I've also got a few things I want to know as well, which I'll be asking. Ali, why don't you start?
Kia ora everyone, my name is Ella, and I will be talking to you about Callaghan Innovation and how we can help the startup ecosystem along with other companies who are doing science and technology. So as a bit of a background, I'm a customer navigator for Callaghan Innovation. My role is to connect all the science and tech businesses with Callaghan so that they can access all the products and the services and funding. And our namesake is Sir Paul Callaghan, who was a leading scientist in New Zealand and a physicist. And his belief was that science was more just the great ideas that come out from it. It was all about the innovation and entrepreneurship that can stem from great ideas. And that's what Callaghan Innovation is trying to embody today, is how we can create commercialisation and entrepreneurship in New Zealand to make it a place where education, jobs and entrepreneurship can continue to thrive. So Callaghan has got 5 key products and services, and the first one is Connect. So connecting ecosystems with science and industry together so that they can thrive and grow. Part of that, for an example, is the Agritech Industry Transformation Plan, which is to connect sectors of agritech and industry and science together. Second, upskill. So this is to help develop commercialisation and innovation ecosystems. This is great for startups, as an example, understanding your market and commercialisation value, but also accessing founder and incubation systems. Third, solve. Callaghan has got over 200 scientists based at the Gracefield Innovation Quarters in Wellington. They're there to help you with technical problems, and you can work with them to increase your technical capabilities within your company. It's an amazing service that can really help you with your R&D. Fourth, funding. There are tax incentives, but so much more than that. There are R&D grants and also brand new commercialisation grants, which I'm excited to share today as well. This funding is here to support you and help you grow with your R&D and commercialisation journey. Finally, grow. Callaghan has got a team of advisors and professionals who can work with you to help you with scaling up and growing in your company. This is because working in science and tech, sometimes you need to go beyond what you already know. You're always pushing the boundaries. So that's where the grow comes in, and this is a great service that Callaghan offers. So to put this into perspective of how it would help different companies at different stages, we've got seed companies who might just be validating their idea, all the way to expansion companies who might be dominating in their market and looking to continue innovation and entrepreneurship. This is how it maps out. We've got products all the way from trying to solve, upskill, fund, connect and grow, and it's there to help the ecosystem and continue entrepreneurship and innovation. What I'll be talking about in particular today for startup companies who are looking to keep developing and also to scale up these services here. So in particular, Product 360, which is for market validation, capital education to understand your capital, how to raise capital in New Zealand, incubators and accelerators. For example, Sprout Agritech, who's an excellent incubator to an accelerator program. The New to R&D grant, this is a brand new grant, never before seen by Callaghan before, which is to help companies that are brand new to R&D. This can be small companies, but also large companies. We'll go into a bit more detail about that. And the other here, Innovation Trailblazer grant, which is there for commercialization. Also the Connection products, which is there to support you in different industries. This can be from health technologies, agri-technologies, Web3. We can go into more detail about that as well. And how to contact us, it's so simple. You go into the website and you just go into the connection form. Every single region in New Zealand has got navigators. So people like me in every region of the country, they're there, your first point of contact, and they will connect you to all the services, help you access and navigate through the complicated innovation ecosystem. I know how complex it is. I used to work at a biotech startup. I know how difficult it is to feel connected and know how to grow in your company and also grow as within the whole sector as well. So having a navigator in your region is a new concept that Callaghan's implemented, and it's there to help you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Ella.
Thank you.
Oh, look at that. Spontaneous applause. And under time as well. Well done.
Kia ora tātou, ko Shannon Thomas aho. I'm from New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, Te Tarapa Tūhono, and our purpose is all about growing companies internationally for the good of New Zealand. We are all about the commercialization piece, kind of picking up from your journey with Callaghan and taking you to the world. You can see we've got on the map there about 40 offices all around the world, and a lot of people in those offices that are there to help New Zealand businesses get started in those markets. We partner also really closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, MFAT, and we share offices in a lot of those places with MFAT staff. Whoops, I've gone too quickly. The support that we provide for exporters in a nutshell is really into kind of three main buckets. The first one is about building that export capability. So before you even go offshore, we'll work with you with some of our programs and services to make sure that you have product market fit, that you know the target markets, you have the market research to justify that you're going after the right opportunities. Then we'll help with international insights and connections, so those people in those offshore offices, advisors, help with understanding the regulatory environment in the countries that you're targeting, understanding the tax environment, and all those sorts of issues, how you might go about recruiting staff, etc. We also run a number of missions and events. Occasionally, with the Prime Minister going offshore, we'll build a trade mission around that travel program. And the third bucket is really around investment readiness and funding. So we have a whole investment team that is dedicated to helping companies build their capital strategy to be able to fund their export growth programs. And we do have some funding as well, in addition to the Callaghan funding, which I'll go into in just a moment. In terms of getting started with NZTE, the best place that you can go, the first protocol should be a portal that we have set up called My NZTE, and you can go in there and register and actually set your parameters so that you are getting tech information, and we'll leave the Manuka honey and the Sauvignon Blanc stuff to those exporters, and you can get information served up to you that is specific to the software world or the tech world and specific to the markets that you're interested in. So if you are going out to the US, you can kind of opt out of all of the stuff around other geographies. On My NZTE, you'll find a wealth of information, market guides to a number of different countries, details and registration for specific events that we put on. There was a series of events yesterday here in Auckland, colourfully called Kiss My Sass and Bite My Sass. Some of them unfortunately had to be cancelled due to weather, but they are a great opportunity for like-minded companies to get together into specific track sessions around CEO or marketing or sales to kind of talk with a facilitator who has been there, done that, and share some of the common challenges and ways to overcome them. And we also have some assessments on there, so you can kind of go up and answer a bunch of questions and get a good benchmark of where you are in your journey and maybe some guidance on potential next steps. The next place I would point you is the KiwiSAS site. KiwiSAS was actually developed by our friends at Callaghan and came under the NZTE umbrella last year. It is really a platform and a foundation and an infrastructure to help the SaaS community further themselves. So it is by the SaaS community for the SaaS community. It will be moved over time to be completely community managed and run. We are just helping to kind of get it moving. Some great videos and more events on that site as well, so I encourage you to check that out. You can go straight to our investment team. You don't need to be a customer with NZTE in order to get access to the folks that can help you connect with potential investors, whether it's high net worths, angel, venture capital. And we have a great section of our My NZTE website called Invest Ed, which is a great program to learn more about how to get ready to raise capital. And then finally, if you really want to talk to a person, you can call our customer advisor team on that 0800 number, and they can kind of walk you through. They'll work with you in a reactive fashion to help you get access to market research or to some of our programs like Export Essentials or Position for Growth, which is a program about helping you develop your value proposition. And then the customer advisor would work with you to kind of determine when you might be ready for that next level of engagement with NZTE. So we have what we call our focus portfolio of customers, which is about 1,400 companies across all sectors. So within the tech, there would be about 400 or 500 companies that we work with. You would get a customer manager that's knowledgeable and speaks the language of ARR and CAC to LTV and all that kind of good stuff, that works with only a portfolio of about 20 companies. So you'll get more proactive, and that person is really an extension of your team. You would also get access to international BDMs in our offices around the world who can help you build your export market strategy for that particular geography. And we have Beachheads advisors, we call them. So we have folks on the ground here in New Zealand that might be able to help you with things like governance or digital marketing strategy. And then we have folks in our international offices or networks as well that can help with other very specific needs. And we can pull those people in to spend an hour or two with you to work through your strategy as needed. And then finally, our grant funding programs. All of our funding programs referred to as the International Growth Fund are a 50-50 mechanism. So we would agree a project you would go and spend on eligible claim and then claim back from NZTE for 50% of it. The entry level is a $5,000 or a $10,000 springboard program, which is up to 6 months. The next level would be your market validation program, which is really intended to validate, is this the right market? Is it a new channel to market? Is it a new product to market? And that's over a 1-year program up to $100,000. And then once you've validated and you're sure this is absolutely the right market for me and my product is starting to get some traction, we can put together a business case and track all of the financial projections and forecasts to put together an expansion grant program. And your customer manager would work closely with you on that to get access to up to $600,000 New Zealand. So that's it in a nutshell. Those are my contact details, but again, I would also encourage you to check out My NZTE as the first place to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. I was really impressed to find there's money there in NZTE, so I look forward to the conversations later. We can dig a bit deeper into that.
Good to
now
know.
let's go to the real money. Over to you, Rob.
Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Rob Everett. I'm the CEO of NZ Growth Capital Partners. I like to use this line as a joke. When I was in the private sector, someone from the government saying we're here to help would strike fear into your heart, so now I use it everywhere I can. So I'm just going to cover these topics: who we are, what we're here for, what support we provide, when a founder should connect with us, and as Graham said, the sequencing here is that we're probably, generally speaking, at the end of the time sequence on this panel, and then how you might connect with us. And we'll put these slides on our website so anyone who wants them can get them. We are basically the government agency that invests in tech startups and venture capital funds, set up in 2002. Some of you may remember it as NZVIF, Venture Investment Fund. We operate through 2 funds, which I'll talk about in a minute, the Aspire Fund and the Elevate Fund. We also have a small market development appropriation from the government to support outfits in the ecosystem that we feel are sort of filling gaps for the underserved bits of the ecosystem or helping us grow capability across that system. So why we exist is a question we ask ourselves often. We were set up to basically support the development of a broad and deep startup ecosystem, whether that be right at the bottom at the pre-seed stage, all the way up to the Series A and Series B stage, and I'll talk about that sequence in a second. And the support we provide, as I said, we operate mostly through two funds. The direct investment fund is Aspire. We invest mostly in seed and pre-seed. At the moment, we're going all the way into the very, very early stage proof of concept on the basis that the market is somewhat challenging at the moment. We're trying to fill that gap. We do go as far as Series A, but I'll explain in a minute. The Elevate fund is really designed to pick up the baton from there, so we try not to cross over with them. We are a generalist fund. By that I mean we invest across tech-driven, innovative, high-growth startups. So we're not a small business investor. We are specifically a tech startup investor. We are generalists, but at the moment we are putting a lot of focus to what people like to call deep tech. And I've broken down a bit further in the slide a whole bunch of segments within deep tech. And by deep tech, what I mean is complex, real cutting edge technology that is not easy to get off the ground, requires patient capital. And we would differentiate that from software, for instance, where for software as a service, if you go back 6 months, probably 60% of our portfolio and 60% of what came in our door was software as a service. That is actually quite well served in New Zealand at the moment. There are a lot of investors who are very good at software as a service. So we're still doing software as a service, but we're also trying to find the bits of the ecosystem that aren't being touched by others. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we do here. You may not be able to see this due to the colouring, but I've tried to break down the deep tech piece on the far right, into agri-tech, food tech, clean tech, a whole bunch of things. Basically, as I say, really complicated stuff that's actually really quite difficult for an investor to get their mind around. And also looking for emerging sectors where New Zealand could punch above its weight, or is already punching above its weight, to see if we can support those sectors become really world class. Over our time, we've invested in over 260 companies. We made 39 investments last year, with about $14 million invested. So that's new companies into the portfolio and follow-ons in the existing portfolio. There's a few of the companies we invested down the bottom there. The second fund we manage is actually a super fund, or I should specifically say a Guardians of the New Zealand Superannuation Fund mandate. So we manage $300 million for the super fund invested in venture capital firms. So that's a fund of funds mechanism designed to fill the gap at the later stage funding, so Series A and Series B. At the moment, we've committed about $200 million into the 8 funds that are currently in that program. And as I say, that operates at the bigger end of the spectrum. And there's a bunch of well-known New Zealand-based funds in that program already. The market development I talked about, we support a lot of people who are doing great work across the ecosystem. Our Accelerator, which is a female founder accelerator program run by the Ministry of Awesome. StartMate, a couple of their fellowships we support. We support quite strongly the Angel Association to make sure the angel groups are getting a leg up from government. And you'll find NZT and Callaghan actually supporting quite a lot of these organisations jointly, just to try and help the ecosystem develop where we want it to. So when you should connect with us, proof of concept, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, pretty much all of those. For most founders, we are probably interacting at this point at proof of concept stage where we wouldn't have been a year or two ago. Before that, we would have been mostly seed and pre-seed for Aspire. And as I say, Elevate, the funds that sit in Elevate would be investing in Series A and Series B. I'm pretty sure we stole this slide off one of my colleagues on the panel. This was an attempt just to show that sequencing from the really early stage proof of concept stuff and which investors are involved in that, the incubators, accelerators, the angel groups, the likes of KiwiNet, and then as it morphs through to Series A, you've got the Elevate Venture Fund. As I say, we will put this up at some point. It's an attempt to simplify what is in fact an extremely complicated ecosystem. So hopefully that's helpful to some people. How you can connect with us, Well, primarily through our website. If you're looking for funding or you think we might be someone you want to talk to about funding, there's a portal on our website for you to come through to make that application. As you would imagine, all of our folk are actually on the website, so if you've got someone that you've been introduced to or you have reason to believe would be the right person for you to speak to, don't hesitate to get in touch direct. And of course, you can always just get in touch directly with me and I'll find the right person. There's only 20 of us, so that's not usually too complicated. So yeah, that's it. That's NZGCP in a very small nutshell, and I'll hand it back to Graham.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. As Rob said, this can be quite a complicated area, so this is a really great effort by these three organisations to produce this bit of conversation, and we're also all collectively working together to try and make it easier, map things out and get some stuff out there. So along the way, if there are things you'd like to know, this is a great place to ask and potentially follow us up later, and we can also try and make those pathways easier. It should be easier, we all realise that, but we've all got the right intent. So let's get into some questions. I've got a couple of starters, but you think about them, and if I see your hand waving around, we'll get a mic across to you, and we'll make this all of us involved rather than just me. I don't want to do all the talking. I do have a little prepared question here, and I'm going to ask you, Shannon, if you don't mind.
First in the hot seat.
You talked about the focus customers, NZTE focus customers. What does that take? There's a lot of companies out there who are exporting, but obviously you focus on some. What does that mean, and how do you become a focus customer? Someone out here might be aspiring to get on the list.
Absolutely. So I guess as a general rule of thumb, we'd be looking for a company that is already selling product, and often sort of a benchmark is about $1 million in revenue. There are exceptions to that. We do have other companies that have come in earlier, but that is generally when we sort of find that companies are ready. We are looking for companies also that are prepared to have a high level of engagement, that are prepared to work with a customer manager and really go through the business strategy. You will get the most out of NZTE the more you put into it. So if you are open with your strategy, your ambitions, your results, that's where you'll get the best value. I always kind of like to say to new companies that come into my portfolio that I recognize that you have a face that you need to present to your investors, and a face that you need to present to your prospects and customers, and a face you need to present to your staff. But you can be completely open and vulnerable with me. I have nothing other than trying to help you grow your business as my kind of intent. In terms of what we ask for customers, there's no cost to become a customer of NZTE. It's really sharing your financials with us once a year, because that's how we show our impact, and filling out an NPS survey a couple times a year and giving. So that's it in a nutshell.
I'm assuming those financials stay confidential.
Absolutely.
When they talk about you can aggregate, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but it is actually interesting to be able to take anonymized feedback back to central government to kind of say, this is what we are seeing in the market, and this is maybe where we need to have a look at some policy settings. And
I'll actually ask this one of Rob, but I think if you both think about it as well, on your slides you talked about agri-tech and a couple of, are there specific, tech is very broad,
yeah.
Are there specific sectors you look at, or do you just take it as a...
Yeah, that morphs over time. So this is that complicated conversation about we're a generalist fund, but we have areas of focus. You end up trying to explain what that means. So it basically means if you're an innovative sort of tech-driven startup, we'll look at anything. But particularly as a government-mandated investor, we are looking in particular areas. We are looking to fill certain gaps. Agri-tech and clean tech would be two obvious spaces where the government is interested in more effort being put in and more startups sort of flourishing up to Series A. We are looking at AI, we're looking at gaming, we're looking at life sciences. So nobody gets turned away if you meet the description of an innovative, tech-driven, growth-oriented startup. But yeah, there are some areas that for our portfolio, because we've got a very big portfolio, we are looking to make sure we're covering all the bases.
Right. Ella?
Yes.
Callaghan come at it from a certain angle, or is it just all tech, all innovation?
going off what Rob said, absolutely, there's different areas of agritech and different technology sectors that Callaghan is interested in, and these are kind of separated into definitions that Callaghan will call innovators and frontier ventures. So within the agritech space, for an example, a frontier venture might get more hands-on support, for example, more advisory services, and potentially open up to different types of funding that could still be available to innovators, but more focused and hands-on support for frontier ventures. So a frontier venture within Callaghan would be a company that is globally ambitious, is doing something that's extremely unique and has a novelty aspect of it. So government focus is on AI and automation. In agritech, we're really looking at seeing how we can implement more automation within agriculture, because that's going to be the future of agriculture, as implementing more of the Industry 4.0 into it. And so in the space of being a frontier venture, that might enable businesses to get more advisory services, as an example.
Okay, so and from the sector space, is your business organisation structured around things like agri-tech, health tech, biotech, or
Yes.
is it? So you've got some key ones you've identified?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we've got agri-tech, clean tech, health tech, construction, in multiple sectors that we do identify businesses as being part of, and digital as well, which is a very broad category. And we do recognise that these categories of companies are very broad, and there is a lot of overlap, and sometimes the application of a certain technology can be used across different sectors, but overall we like to define them as what is going to be the end use of the product or service that's been used.
Thank you. And Shannon and NZTE, you have a sector approach, or is it?
Well, anyone can become a focused customer, so it's not a limiting factor, but we are involved also in the Agritech ITP, Industry Transformation Plan, and we also have a number of people that have been assigned a liaison role with the NZ Tech subsector groups and associations. So we have somebody that's working closely with the health tech group and somebody that's working closely with the fintech group. So there is increasing alignment in that sense.
And I do want to make the point, which is probably worth making anyway, is that we often see companies that have been working with NZTE or Callaghan, or maybe companies that we've invested in will go on to work with NZTE. So this is not an exclusive, one passes into the other and the rest of it. So there will be companies who touch all three of us at different points, and indeed other government agencies at different points in their existence.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I'm interested in is the way you've described your customers slightly differently, but you're very literally calling them customers.
We do.
Does it actually cost to engage with NZTE or to get support from Callaghan or engage in the process? Do you want to talk around a little bit about, I mean, you've said it's easy to get in touch with you, but what does it actually cost a tech firm to engage with you guys?
Well, we're easy because we give money, we don't take it. So apart from a bit of hard work and some patience, anyone that we invest in, that's part of what we do. That's our job. So we do provide some support to investee companies, around governance and market validation and all the other things that we've covered here today. But that that's as a company that we've invested in, as opposed to as a specific service we offer.
It is free to become an NZTE customer. There are some programs that we run that are paid. So we have, for example, a CEO study tour that we organise for a group of companies to go across to the US, or we've done them actually now in New Zealand as well. Spend a couple of days on the West Coast with the likes of Google, and then go across to the East Coast and spend some time with some exemplar companies over there to really learn about how to be super amazing at customer empathy, among other things. Those types of programs obviously will cost some money, but it's just covering the cost of actually running the program rather than paying anything. As I said, it's probably more an investment of time and energy.
So that time that you give to give them guidance and support, that's like that's like an extra step.
It's free.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Same again for Callaghan?
It's free to get in touch with Callaghan, and it's simple as well. So there's a process within Callaghan that we have got Callaghan navigators in every region around New Zealand. So there's about 33 of us, every region has got this navigator that's part of the Regional Business Partner Network, which is also a managerial capability development fund. And so I'm part of the Regional Business Partner Network as well at SODA, which is the whole Waikato Regional Business Partner Network. So we're your first touch point if you're looking at anything related to growing your business, but also accessing Callaghan. So it's free to get in contact with us. All you do is you jump onto the Callaghan website and you fill in a form and ends straight into the inbox of your navigator in your local region, because you say what region you're in, and then you'll get a response from your navigator, and from there you'll be able to set up a session where the navigator will discover what your challenges are, what you're trying to achieve, what you're doing, and from there we might actually recommend NZ to you, for an example, if they're actually ready for more exporting advice. Or we might be able to recommend some funding, for example, the New to R&D grant or the Adhere Innovation Trailblazer, or there could be a service that they need. For example, they might be interested in the Lean implementation program. Some of these do cost money to be involved with, and you do need to put some skin in the game if you're wanting to get some co-funding from Callaghan. That might cost money, but you get value back from Callaghan.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what I understand about the grants and stuff like that is it's matching type.
It's co-funding, and it's different depending on the grant, but it is always co-funding.
I'd like to ask if there's any questions in the audience. There are a few. Have we got a mic we can run to? Yes, we've got one over there. Thank you. At the back.
Yeah, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
One of my biggest questions would be, I'm trying to figure out if it's better to stay in New Zealand and try and get investment privately or with the government doing partnerships or what have you, or go back to California and get my investments over there. I was talking with Peter Beck, and face-to-face, we had a big conversation for a long time. Plans to do multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar environmental solutions and stuff. But the last time I tried to get any support from the government, it's probably like 8 years ago, perfected the proposals, nobody knew anything about it. So I was more or less leaning towards California investment, seeing as I think Peter Beck tried for about 4 years plus, had no support, went up to America, California, came back and within a week, had all of his funding, investments, and then the government jumped on board. So it's basically, I'm trying to figure out what's the main advantage staying here and basically pairing up with you guys versus shipping out and going with Goldman Sachs or someone in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, don't do that. Shall I start?
You can start. I've got a few ideas, but we'll let the professional speak.
As a former US investment banker, don't do that. So look, hopefully you will decide to stay. What I would say is that this ecosystem is drastically different now than it was even 3 years ago, and certainly 5-7 years ago. And stories like Peter Beck's, where he didn't get the support here, but is now a shining example of everything good about the ecosystem. One would hope those examples today would get treated slightly differently. I would never say, and for most of the companies, all of the companies we invest in, at some point their market is not in New Zealand, and as a result, probably the core of their investors are going to be offshore investors. But that's not a reason not to start here. It's not a reason not to develop your technology here. So I think the ecosystem that we're all trying to develop would be one that keeps people like you in the country for longer, developing the technology, training people up, developing the capability, doing great things for New Zealand. And honestly, if at some point in that journey, the bigger investors with deeper pockets or the better technology know-how are somewhere else, fair enough, that tends to be the sequence it takes. But we would hope, I think, to create an environment where great technology in its really early stages feels that it gets supported both by the private sector and by the government sector. So that's the aspiration.
I would tautoko everything that you've said there. Just add that with the NZTE investment team in those 40 offices, some of them we have investment managers as well, and so they are in touch with, investors, the VC community in California and in Europe, in the UK, and you can have the best of both worlds and still raise overseas capital and stay and do it from New Zealand.
Yeah, I forgot to mention one of our aspirations at NZGCP is to help grow that global connectivity and build the connections with overseas VC funds, so that if you do get to the point where a lot of your funding is coming from overseas, that's still connected through the syndicate of investors that have worked with you here, so it doesn't have to be a complete black and white situation.
Yeah, I can see that there is an alignment that everything we want to do is to try and build an economy here, but to try and get you to go overseas as well. We do actually want you to open the doors and go to California if that's where you do want to go. So from Callaghan's perspective, if you come to us with a novel idea with some great IP that might be associated with that, and you say you really are interested in going global, there is support there for you, whether that's just from getting started on a new grant, or that could be tax incentives, or it's more than that as well. You can get services and support to actually build the capabilities within your company as well. There is a support there, and there is a synergy between us as government organisations that can help you get to where you need to go. So I would say it's relatively easy to bring a startup and build it up here in New Zealand. There's also private support as well, shared working spaces too. So there is a good relationship between government support. So I would say that it's good to bring a business here and start it.
And if you pick on the Peter Beck example, for instance, I have heard him say that, he didn't get traction here when he was setting up. But when he decided to build his business here, the regulatory environment here was much easier to navigate, much quicker to get approvals. And as a result, that's why one of the reasons he based his business here. So that's not true in all areas. There are a few sectors, and frankly, we'd all like there to be more, where the process for getting kind of regulatory approvals to get complex really ought to be easier here than it is in most places. And the other thing I would say about to go back to Peter Beck, is one of the reasons we want some of these companies to achieve real scale here is the spin-offs you get from a successful company that built people up, built capability. If you look at the aerospace sector, you look at gaming, you look at the wetter stuff, you look at Xero, all of those have spawned enormous numbers of people going out on their own to build other great businesses. So just selfishly, if we can keep them here long enough to do that, that's a great thing for our economy.
Yeah, another question. If I can just wrap up on that one. I've been doing this job for 8 years. 1 year into my job 8 years ago, we sent a letter to the Prime Minister because a tech company in New Zealand raised $2 million. And the ecosystem was very fragmented. Everyone had to go overseas. And this is still a journey. This is not perfect yet, but even in 4 years, it's been a massive change. So I think you balance what you want from your own life, the type of environment you got, and there's a ton of people like these folks here who just want to try and help enable that in this environment. Next question. Thank you.
It's a question for all four of you, really, just in your sort of experience. What do you see as kind of the largest business skills gap across the three kind of growth levers, acquisition, retention, monetization, and how are you actually helping to plug that gap, if at all?
That's a great question. Yeah. I've seen that commercialization of technology is the biggest gap when it comes to transforming sectors and transforming industries and growing your business. We have a lot of startups and excellent businesses who are very technical focused, and it's quite well known that when you're taking that technology and trying to commercialize it, that's where there are hurdles. Commercializing could be really taking advantage of the IP and creating a great strategy, or it could be building a team so you can scale up when everything gets busy. What are we trying to do to overcome that? Callaghan has just released a brand new grant about 3 weeks ago. It's called the Adhere Innovation Trailblazer Grant, and it's to do with exactly this problem. We've got great people who are smart, intelligent and technical, but commercialization is a challenge. This grant is to help with commercialisation of technology, not R&D, commercialisation. That's prototyping, that's market validation, that's growing a team, it's going overseas to try and build relationships with other stakeholders. So that's what Callaghan is trying to do for that. We're currently in phase 1 of this grant that's been released. It's called the SEED grant. That's 50% co-funding that you can get up to 25k from Callaghan, and you put in 25k yourself. The full grant, which is set to be released in a couple of months, is up to $4 million of funding that you can get from Callaghan. It's 30% co-funded. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's a trailblazer grant for anyone who's doing something novel and innovative that's going to lead to trailblazer of new ecosystems and new commercialisation and entrepreneurship in New Zealand.
Yeah, great answer.
I think I see a few gaps, but probably the most compelling one that could impact all the others is really around governance. I think there's not a great understanding. A lot of perception of governance is that it's risk and compliance and somebody is going to be looking over your shoulder, but really it's about setting that long-term vision and strategy of the business and figuring out how are we going to get there. And the improvement on the business that can come from even starting with an advisory board and then getting some guidance around what does a board of directors look like, why do you need one, and who should be comprising, and how would you run that board and effective board meetings. And we have some advisors that can come and make a very big difference to how you shape your governance strategy.
Yeah, I mean, what they said, but in addition, so commercialization, yes, absolutely we see, that being thinner than we would like, but also for the title scaling up. So at the point where we're invested, one of the challenges for New Zealand is actually that transition, if you like, to operating in overseas markets for the most of your revenue and possibly most of your future. There isn't a lot of experience in New Zealand of having scaled up a company from one that's experimenting in New Zealand to one that is operating, top of class globally. We're a small country. We don't have the depth of population that a lot of the other jurisdictions have. And so that can be a challenge. That can be a challenge making that step, to hiring the people and building the processes and turning from a company that operates with 6 people to a company that operates with 60 or 200 or whatever, and finding the people who've done that before and who are willing to come back to New Zealand and do it again. That's a challenge, but it's one we're all aware of, and hopefully. New Zealand's not the worst place in the world to live, so hopefully we can attract some of those people either back to New Zealand or into New Zealand to help companies take that step.
And there was another question over here somewhere I saw. Yeah, a couple more. Come the mics.
Yeah, hi. Question would be just on the SME funding. Here obviously you've got the startup grants and you've got the equity raise that you can help with as well. But what about working capital finance? SMEs can put in invoices and you'll finance up to say 25,000. Are there any opportunities for that here?
Not probably on this panel. I know the government is looking at a business growth fund, which would be trying to fill the gap for investing in SMEs that aren't tech startups without equity investment, for instance. And that might be one of the things I think that might be comprised in that. If you're talking slightly bigger ticket, if you look at NZ Gift, Green Investment Finance, I think some of the financing tools they use for the clean tech stuff are not direct equity investment, so I think they do some of that stuff. But I think at the SME level, that's probably not sitting with any of us.
All of Callaghan's funding is co-funding, so you put some money in and Callaghan will put some money in. It's not just a grant that gets handed.
That'd be a no. Another question here.
Hi there. If you're heading towards a Series A, what would you be looking for, and what advice do you think you want to give before we reach you?
Yeah, well, we could go for a while. How long have we got? I think
Maybe
it's an X, so
Rob.
I need to be quite short.
Maybe Rob as well, just for
Yeah.
anyone who's not in the space, just a little bit of clarity on what the different stages the Series A
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, this is always the topic of debate amongst angel, seed, and venture capital investors in terms of, what the different stages of funding are. Series A in New Zealand would be roughly regarded as where you're raising a funding round of, say, 20 million bucks plus. New Zealand, maybe 25. In some of the definitions and some of the legislation, it was kind of coming in at 2 million bucks. I think we see a lot of seed rounds at 2 million bucks these days. So I would say Series A is anywhere from, let's say you're 10-ish around in dollars. But to your question, it's not really about the amount of money you're raising specifically for Series A. I think the way we look at Series A, it's the maturity of your thinking about your business model, whether you've tested your product with customers, whether you've got a clear go-to-market strategy, whether you've done all of that work, and that what you're looking to do is the scaling up piece. So what you're looking to do is to build off all of that base and really build your company significantly. So, Series A for us, you get into that, put a number on it, but it is actually more about what stage is your business. And I think what you need to be demonstrating is real clarity on the direction you're going in, what you'd use the money for, what your gaps are, where your key market is, who your key suppliers are. You shouldn't still be trying to figure all that out when you're doing a Series A round. You should have a pretty good handle on that. So for me, it's less about how much and more about how mature is your thinking about where you're trying to take your business.
That's a good question.
Kia ora. Do you have a, how do I put it, Māori economy KPI?
Yes.
And what is it?
I don't know off the top of my head what it is, I'm sorry. We have a whole team, and we have a number of Māori customer managers. Probably a lot more customers in our space in the food and beverage, but we do have 2 or 3 customer managers that are Māori working with our tech Māori businesses as well.
And are they connected very closely with particular iwi in order to grow that?
I don't know, sorry. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Same with Callaghan. Callaghan Innovation has got a Māori economy team, and they have got KPIs, as you mentioned, and they work directly with Māori companies, and we've also have got part of our services is we also like to support Māori businesses with the business innovation advisors, and we give that extra more proactive support to Māori businesses so we can raise their capability and help them with the growth of their company as well.
Yeah, and we have 2 goals, if you like, or directives from the government in terms of what we should be looking at in this space, and we're only small, so we don't have a separate team. One would be to look for founders from any underserved sector of the economy, which would include Maori and Pacifica. So, we're always balancing the performance returns that we need to get out of our portfolio with how do we fill the gaps with how diverse that portfolio is. So that's on the investment side. The other side would be where capital comes from that comes into this sector. So we have an objective to try and work out how to give the iwi and the Maori economy access to tech startup opportunities as investments, and how to build that investment capability. So we're not a long way off the ground and trying to work out how you do that. But as I say, on the one hand, looking for founders who come from that community, but also working out how we can introduce the Maori economy into some of the opportunities that might not be coming to it at the moment in our space.
Thank you.
Apologies, I missed your intro. Question for Rob. Do you also lead rounds as well, or is it just a follow-on to
That's
to
a very
others?
good question. Our model has evolved over the years. Until very recently, our mandate did not allow us to lead rounds. So just to explain that to people, the thinking was that as a government-owned investor, our job was to facilitate and catalyze private sector money into this space. So if we lead lots of deals, we're not really doing that. You know, we're putting ourselves before the private sector. So the ethos is that we will support rather than lead. Given the current market conditions, and there are some great deals that are struggling to get funding, particularly the really early stage, kind of complex, long-term sort of capital-intensive businesses, we now have the mandate to lead if we see fit. But we haven't yet actually done that. We've tended to partner with other investors to get rounds away.
That is very good. And the questions keep coming.
Last one, maybe. What are the coolest things that you've invested in recently?
Oh, I guess that would be for me. Yeah. Oh gosh, well I need to be careful. I'm going to upset a whole bunch of people by only picking a couple out. One company that would pick up a lot of the issues that are being discussed today is a company called Aquafortis, and they're in the space of taking wastewater out of industrial facilities. The original model was to clean that water so that the water could be reused, and actually, bless them, they worked out that what they were taking out of the water could also be reused and repurposed and sold to other people. And they're a good example of a company that you know, is long-term capital intensive because you have to build plants to do all of this stuff. It's incredibly expensive. We're talking, you know, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of overall investment over time rather than a few million. They're a company that has to operate in overseas markets to succeed because the scale's not here. They're a company that's got a couple of offshore investors in there alongside the rest of us. And one of my team went to work for them recently, so I have a soft spot for them. But they're a good example of a company that is trying to solve a really huge issue for the globe, which is, you know, both waste management and water management, and has the guts to, you know, really take on a very complex business model that will take years and years and years, probably decades, to really pay off. And you know, we were very proud to get into them, so they'd be one example of a company we really like. But you know, all of the companies in our portfolio we're proud to be in. So yeah, I'll just single them out as the current hot favourite.
I'll also share a story about a company. Callaghan doesn't invest in companies, but we provide a breadth of support. So I won't name them just in case, but they got a project grant about 3 years ago to work on it's a software product that can measure up your a room in your house that you're wanting to build a wall for. So for example, Gibboard. And they've created a software and a product that can be given to builders to measure up very easily with a little, like it's like a wand. And that software then goes to a CNC machine, and they can cut the Gibboard to precision to reduce waste, decrease the amount of time, and also decrease the amount of breakage that can happen with the material. They've done an incredible amount of work, and they started off in a garage with a project grant, which was an old grant that Callaghan had, which was for R&D for working on a project like this. But from there, they created their prototype and they did R&D, but then they also got student grants. So Callaghan funds students that come out of university, fully funded for 6 months. This can be masters or PhD grads. They got their students to come in to work on the project. They also got summer students to work on the project as well, so this is 10-week student internships that they can do to work on it. They did an incredible amount of work to get the project rolling. From there, they've also realised the actual scale of what they can actually provide to different distribution centres that can help with providing the material to builders. So we organised a business innovation advisor to work with them to understand their strategy, what they can really leverage off, and that work is underway at the moment, and there's been an incredible amount of success from there. And they're still a startup, but really getting the ball moving and seeing what is actually out there for them for support.
Awesome. Have you got a cool story?
I mean, loads of cool stories. One that they're not my customer, so I don't know them super closely, but Halter, I think, is a really interesting company. They have sensors around the necks of farm animals, so sort of electronic gating, which I think is just a phenomenal innovation. It has a lot of applicability for a lot of international markets to take them to the world, but I don't know a lot more than that about them.
Would just love to mention that this company was in Hamilton as well, and I think Halter's also based in does a lot of work in the Waikato as well.
Yeah.
So Waikato, Hamilton, great place to do tech.
Wonder where she's from.
I live in Auckland and I thought Hamilton was just going to be a bunch of farmers, but it's actually a lot more than that. So great place to start up your tech company.
Excellent. We won't take any more. Oh, can we take one more? We'll take one more.
Oh, sure.
We'll take one more. You know, it's got to be a good one. Here comes the mic.
He's just going to ask where are drinks.
Yeah. I was just going to get to that.
Kia ora, everyone. My name is Sokol. Thank you very much. What are the next 3 steps of each of you for New Zealand, of what you represent? So the next 6 months, 1 year, that's it. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a really nice question to finish with, because what I was going to offer was a little bit of wrap-up time for each of them. So maybe as you go through your wrap-up, just also, you've already shared some of the stuff coming down the pipeline, but anything that you think is coming down the pipeline or is in action, like you were saying, Rob, but it needs to grow a bit. So why don't we just go reverse this time from the big to the small, hear about any last points and a bit of a wrap-up, and we'll get to the drinks.
Fine. I think nothing much different from what we're doing already, subject to someone deciding to give us a couple of $1 billion to spend. That would change a few things. In particular, as a government investor, our mandate requires us to, as I said earlier, to have that blend between returns out of the portfolio, because that's the only money we've got, right? So if we don't make money in the portfolio, there's no more investments to make. With the directive to look for the underserved sectors, product sectors, underserved sectors of society, their demographics, gender, geography, all of those. So I think the sort of key next step for us, and thinking about the question about Maori founders and Maori companies, is to further develop that thinking between the balance between making returns and making investments that meet that mandate. And it's what honestly makes the job fun. That's why I took the job, that balance of making enough money to still be able to invest in the years to come, with finding the great opportunities, for founders and companies that may not be in the mainstream, may not get the opportunities that some others are getting, and trying to help them on the way. So I think the key issue for us going forward is building out that balance. And then if it should happen that we get given a load more money, then we'd love to do some specific, more impact-focused funds that would meet some of those objectives, that would mean we could be much more explicit about how we invest in those particular funds. So I think that's probably what the future holds for us.
I think for NZTE, it's really about our digital strategy and how do we impact more businesses than just the 1,400 in our special club. And tools like the My NZTE portal, which is just a couple of years old really, we're putting as much content on there so that people can self-serve and grab a lot of that value for themselves. I mentioned briefly the assessments. There'll be a lot more tools like that, so you can go in and put information in and benchmark and see where you sit and get recommendations through. So that's an area you can expect to see a lot more coming down the pipe from NZTE. From a software as a service and tech perspective, we are really leaning into subsectors a lot more. So there'll be more coming down the pipe, particularly around fintech, health tech, gaming, and subsectors like that. So we're working on that strategy. So watch this space.
Callaghan's been through quite a roller coaster of the last year. There's been some changes. One of them being the navigation system that's been implemented, and we've now got navigators in all the regions, which I mentioned before. So these are your first point of contact in every region around the country. But also the 2 new grants that have come out. So that's the New to R&D grant and the Adhere Innovation Trailblazer grant, focusing on different aspects of R&D and also commercialisation. So one of the things that we're looking forward to in the coming months is the Atahia Innovation Full Grant, which is that $4 million co-funding that Callaghan can provide for trailblazers in New Zealand. What we're really looking forward to is seeing new industries and new ecosystems come up from that. And we're looking forward to seeing some great stories from those companies as well. And so I think if there's anything that I would love for everyone to take away from here today is if you're a tech or science startup or established business and you haven't already engaged with one of us before, just get in touch. Just
my wrap up.
Yeah, nice.
I'll say it for Callaghan then. How about this? It's really easy. Jump on the Callaghan website. Just get in touch. So it's so simple, and it's just we love just talking to other cool businesses that are doing amazing work in the country, and we're also really keen to see what's happening and how we can even collaborate together and support businesses.
Excellent. Nice wrap up. Thank you very much.
What
Just what I was going to say is that what's very exciting about all this is what you've got here. These are all government agencies. It is our taxpayer money, and it's good to see some real effort and thought going into placing it well. It's not just chucking money at the next trend or wave. There's a lot of structure and thought behind it all. There's a lot of ways to engage with them. They are really looking to help grow businesses to create a better New Zealand, not just to grow businesses so someone can get a fancy yacht in the Bahamas. So, or California, if it's a fancy yacht in California, that's fine, but their job is really to make a better New Zealand. And on behalf of NZ Tech, as a not-for-profit whose job is to try and use a more sustainable, equitable and prosperous New Zealand underpinned by good tech, we work closely with all of these agencies, and I'd encourage you to, anyone's a good door because I'll pass you to the next one. If you think there's an opportunity to do some really cool stuff with tech, or you know someone who should be, point them this way. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Good.